Hey there, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George Affleck.
And it's time for
UnSpun.
And we do have some unspinning to be done, but this is the quietest week in the 20 weeks we've been doing this.
I think so. I mean, it's interesting that we've have no big issues that are literally coming out this morning that we don't have to deal with.
More often than not, we've had to delay taping this because something was so
You got to read something
immediate. But we do have a bunch of stuff we want to unpack, and let's start with something quite topical.
Yeah, this did happen today.
This did happen today.
Mm-hmm.
What is happening with regard to policing in Surrey? Mayor Doug McCallum came in on the platform that he was going to have a Surrey police force in place, done with the RCMP, said it was going to be something that would help repair what seems to be broken in Surrey with regard to managing gang violence, etc.
Lots of problems in Surrey.
Lots of problems in Surrey, but he feels that a police force that is designated to the area will help, and he got elected. So here we are.
That and the train thing, yes.
Exactly. Transit. So doing some digging on the costs associated with this, and Doug McCallum has gotten quieter and quieter with regard to how much it might actually cost taxpayers. Can you give us some George Affleck unspun perspective on what is happening in Surrey?
There's a bunch of stuff happening. So first of all, they had an in-camera meeting today. They called it a private meeting. This is quite common in local governments, for sure, where you meet privately about stuff that's usually related to real estate or some significant financial stuff. And so
let's be honest, it's stuff that they don't want people to hear until they've decided on how to spin it.
Not always, because sometimes it's real estate, so you have to be careful about speculation and things like that.
So
this issue, I don't see a lot of need for private conversations.
Right.
But they had one, and when you have an in-camera meeting, you're not allowed. It restricts you. You can't talk about it.
Legitimately, the councillors that are in the know on this report are not allowed. What happens if you do?
Well, you can lose your seat. You get reprimanded. You could potentially, legally, you could get in big trouble. It's just really defies the act. And so, what happened though, I think, is what's interesting. And so you make a decision in that meeting usually about what you're going to release. And so McCallum's releasing some of the information. But they can't talk about the debate. They can't talk about the vote. They can't unless they make a decision to release all the information in that in-camera meeting.
From what I've read so far from the councillors in Surrey is that they've seen the full report, including the dollars and cents, the actual dollars, because the prospected or the perceived costs, if we look at the Vancouver policing costs, around $300 million. And Surrey, the assumption is about half of that at $150 million.
Yeah, well, that's the current budget is $150 million. He says it'll be 10% more. Population of Surrey is about 85% of Vancouver's.
And George Affleck
geography
thinks it's going to be
is larger. Oh, it's going to be $300 million, that policing budget. Of course it's going to be. I mean, unless they don't want a good police force. In Vancouver, we have our own police. We've had it for a long time. Their biggest challenge is they can't find police officers. They're always down 70 to 100 officers. And so I find it extraordinarily interesting if the province, and we could talk about that, approves this, where are they going to get these police officers from?
Yeah.
Are they going to poach them from Vancouver? Are they going to poach them from the RCMP? What are they going to offer them? More money? More money? It costs money. So this budget could skyrocket significantly very quickly.
Municipal police forces like Vancouver Police make more than the RCMP would, right?
Yes, mainly because of overtime. They get a lot of overtime.
So there's that for starters, and then recruitment is an issue. And I have to give a shout out to the Vancouver Police Department recruitment arm, because they've been doing a blitz on social media on recruiting, and I want to be a Vancouver police officer because I want to ride horses at events. I want to be on the quad on the beach, not arresting people for drinking wine out of a coffee cup.
And just a note to the police, next year, 420 is on the 20th of April. You can hold your hiring fair at Sunset Beach.
That really would be genius.
Just saying. It's a solution.
I'm just saying right now, off the top of my head, could we maybe plan an event, you and I, at Sunset Beach where we actually get a permit for 420?
UnSpun live for 3 days
Let's
nonstop.
do it.
A world record.
Has to be a protest.
Has to be a protest. No, we could get a permit.
I'll protest being there for 3 days.
We could get a permit.
That'll be my protest.
Okay, so the in-camera, going back to the in-camera meeting, because honestly, before we started doing this podcast 20 weeks ago, I didn't really know what in-camera meant.
It's an unusual term, in-camera. What does that mean? Yeah, it's off-camera, out of camera, not
do leaks
in-camera.
ever happen as a result of in-camera meetings?
Do what?
Leaks.
There was a very controversial one before I got elected related to some at City Hall in Vancouver that involved a whole bunch of leak stuff coming out about Olympic Village that ended into an RCMP investigation. And
did anybody find out who the leak was?
No. They couldn't find out. Somebody leaked something about the real estate values of Olympic Village and the deal that was made. And that was with Sam Sullivan's term. So that was a very good example of somebody leaked something. The report that was presented to council in camera was leaked to the media, and it was damaging to the MPA for sure.
Interesting. Well, we're going to keep our eyes peeled on Surrey because we are expecting to get most of the report on the Surrey Police Force proposal, and maybe without the numbers, maybe without the cost. But from a provincial government perspective, obviously Surrey is an important electorate, a voting
yes,
area.
And by the way, just a note on their. I think I brought this up before. On their taxes, the police budget is actually on. You can actually see what the tax.
It's a line item.
It's a line item in their tax forms, so you can actually see, and potentially in the future, if it goes past, the pain that will have on you.
So you'll actually see that on your tax bill.
Yeah, the massive increases. Yeah, you'll see it.
Might they try and remove that line?
Well, it's complicated. That's where the province comes in, and the role of the province and policing is significant. So this report has gone off to the province, who now make a decision. I think it's Mike Farnworth who's going to be making the decision within the government about what's going to happen, and they also get to decide on how taxation forms look and what you get, and you have to apply and all this process with the province. City councils serve at the pleasure of the province. We have to always remember that. They are arms of the province in a way.
So people who assume that they're separate entities are mistaken.
They serve at the pleasure of the province. They control the bylaws of overall the way cities are administered. We have a municipal act that covers all the other cities except for Vancouver. And in Vancouver, we have the Vancouver Charter, which is its own entity. And that's why Vancouver gets some special treatment. It gets to do things like, for example, I'm going on a tangent here, but for example, sprinklers in Vancouver, they have it required since 1973 in any new builds. And that's not a requirement everywhere else in the province.
Huh. George facts, but that's
a real fact.
That's a real fact. Let's talk about the provincial government now. These are, throw that Surrey policing on top of a massive pile that the NDP has to deal with right now. The plate's always full. Provincial politics is always noisy and busy and whatnot, but I'm looking at what is on the roster. Thorny days for the NDP.
I know, and I think this police thing, the first thing the province is going to do, and the NDP must be doing, is polling in the swing ridings in Surrey, which there are a few, and they won the last election, or they got that because of 2 or 3 Surrey ridings. They are likely looking at those riding, going, okay, if we do allow Surrey police to come in, what do people in that riding feel about it?
Do they want it,
or are they against it? And if they're for it, they'll probably go, let's do it. Because it's no skin off there. The city of Surrey gets to pay for it.
But the power of certain ridings is really something else.
Yeah, there's these swing ones like EB's riding. He's in a swing riding and he's getting a lot of heat these days.
He is. He actually had a protest planned for outside of his constituent's office on West Broadway. People stepping out saying, hey, we're done with the school tax. There was quite a movement on social media to get people out with their big signs, the professionally printed signs, which I think is so funny. But then David Eby didn't show up there, and we're not really sure why. There was no statement as to why he wasn't there. He was scheduled to be there. He has canceled in the past due to security reasons. But it's interesting. But there are a lot of
Canadians are so whatever.
Well, let's start with money laundering. The money laundering inquiry.
There's so many issues that the NDP are dealing with that are not going away. And I think I've brought this up before with Benjamin Netanyahu, who I saw an interview with him, and he talked to, and he won again. Nobody thought he would.
No.
But he talked about you always do the really hardcore
dirty
stuff in that first year. So McCallum is an example. He's trying to get all that done. He's trying to get this done in his first year. It's amazing. To his credit, he got the SkyTrain thing going, and he's got this policing. We're only 8 months into his term, and he has this policing. It's off to the province, and now it's in their hands. Those are 2 significant achievements, whether you like it or not, that he's pulled off.
But they're promises that he made, and he's kept.
And then now he has, no matter what happens, if neither of the things, he did what he tried to do. Now he can spend 3 years building the trust. Whether he runs again is a question. He's 150 years old. So
easy. Sorry, Doug McCallum, if you happen to be watching. Good on you. Ageism. Come on.
That's actually that's a George fact.
That's a George fact.
Actually,
He's
is
not
150 years old.
You're blushing now.
In political years, for every year of a human, multiply it by 3.
So how old are you?
I'm 150 as well.
But let's talk. Okay, what we got a laundry list. Oh, money laundering.
Yeah, so the EB I think is in trouble for sure because you can't shake these things. Not showing up is one approach.
But he was very popular at the get-go, as much as ICBC was unpopular and the dumpster fire that he was. But he coined that phrase, and he was very blunt and literal about this is a problem that is not going away. It's going to hurt to fix it. And the money laundering inquiry, thanks to great journalism of the likes of Sam Cooper and Kathy Tomlinson and many others, John Waugh comes to mind, who have really unearthed what government and police haven't managed to do.
They tipped their hat.
All of that.
Well
so
done,
we're diving into the
journalists.
money laundering inquiry, and some people are very happy about that. Others are pissed off at the price because it's going to come down to taxes, and taxes are hurting people. And people are talking about the school tax and the speculation tax and the tax loan tax and the gases and taxes.
Tax.
And people are thinking, okay, well, our housing market is cooling now because money laundering is hopefully subsiding somewhat, and certainly our real estate market isn't being used as a stock or commodity anymore. Is it time to maybe step back from these taxes put in place to cool the market? And you're naive girl.
We have this thing called income tax. I'm not sure if you heard of that. We didn't used to have income tax, and then about 100 years ago, they started this thing called income tax. And once you do a tax, you never. I can't. I'm trying to think. I mean, the HST we reversed, but we still just kind of changed the structure of it. Still gets paying the same.
It's on the gas now.
Yeah, it's on the gas, on the tax. So I highly doubt it. And I think those people in the EB's riding who are living in these homes that will be affected.
The 3 million plus homes.
Yeah, I mean, people might say, oh, you poor little rich people, but you still win locally quite often. And we're talking about a government that's only barely surviving electorally, unless Liberals really blow it in the next election, which is likely a year away, and maybe the commission will uncover a whole bunch of things, and maybe people will hate the BC Liberals even more, but.
Or not. Or it'll just be an example of
So we'll
government.
have another election, and it'll be 5 seats difference, which is kind of standard. And those seats, one of those seats could be Evie's, and he could lose it because of one thing like a tax. And it doesn't matter to all this stuff. If people are if enough people in your riding are mad at you, and it's a swing riding, you're in trouble.
And when the protest happened on West Broadway, I saw a news report on it of one woman, and it really resonated with me because she's like, you're making the assumption that because I live in this house that has a high value, that I have a great deal of money, and I don't. And she did look distressed about it. She did look like, I might have to sell my house because I can't pay this extra tax.
Yeah, because it's on the gross. It's like 1% or 1% on $3 million. Yeah, that's a lot of money. And if you're,
I couldn't do it.
I know there are teachers who live in the Point Grey Kits area who live in these houses they paid, 40 years ago that are worth millions, and they were, less and less every day. But
let's talk about teachers, because that's another mark that is rapidly hitting the NDP, where it used to be just egg on the face of Christy Clark's Liberals and those who came before her in the arguments with the BC Teachers Federation, the BCTF.
Yes.
As a mother of a now 11-and-a-half-year-old, he likes the half. When he was in kindergarten, that strike happened. The whole debacle of class size and composition and bargaining rights, and what I learned so much in those days. I was at Breakfast Television at the time, and I'd interview both sides, and my head spun with just how nobody seemed to really grasp the fact that there are kids in the system right now who are not benefiting from a solid education. Like, why are we not fixing this? And that it is happening again as the
government that said they were all championing the court case against the Liberals' decision not to.
John Horgan, as the leader in the opposition, was like, fix this.
Yeah.
And now I know people within the BC.
It's going to cost me $500 million.
Let's just pay for kids to have education. Like,
well,
we need
I
teachers.
find, because I got my start in politics as part of the PAC at my school. I was the chair of the Parent Advisory Committee Yes, that's how
Go,
yes,
George.
Yes, I was for 4 years, I think.
Wow.
And I was, we made a lot of money when I was there. Because you have to now, which I was most shocking to me was how much, and it's such a metaphor for downloading from governments to government to government and down, basically, as we all say, there's only one taxpayer. But when you're a charity, or you're in the pack at your schools, you see how much stuff you're paying for.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, my parents only came to school if I had gotten in trouble or in a fight, which happened on occasion. Sometimes
Not
well, there was one. It's a whole other story, but you know.
I'm going to hold you to that story. I want that. That'll be our Christmas show.
Let me just say that the principal wanted to high five me because of I was defending my sister's honor.
Nice.
Yes.
I like that. But your parents only came to school when you were in trouble, or for me, it was graduation.
Right.
And the one time I was in a play. But other than that, they were too busy. They never. And I don't remember ever having to say, I'm going on a field trip, I need $20.
No.
Ever. Ever. And I'm like this with my son.
The buses used to be there at school. You're like, all right, field trip.
Right. But I'm doling out for my son. But
Yes.
a point that I think is a positive is that in his school, anyway, on the form where it says, here's how much it is and here's what we're doing and there's a note at the bottom that says, no student should not be able to due to financial reasons, and I think that's what the PAC has, a contingency fund to take care of kids. You know, there's no kids going hungry at the school because people are taking care of one another, but it is left to the PAC, and it is. I know teachers. My dad was a teacher, right? They're buying paper because they have an allotment of paper at the beginning of the year, and if you go beyond that,
100%, all those stuff, sports equipment, all that stuff's being bought by the school through the PAC.
Yeah.
And which some of that money comes through gaming. So millions of, I think the PAC I was on got $15,000, or I think it was $10,000 or $15,000 a year. I'm trying to remember. And the comedy festival that I was on boards as well. And the amount of money, the gaming money, it's everywhere. I'm just digressing here. But PAC do rely on gaming, but that's about it from the province.
When you digress, I learned. So never change. So the teaching, we're going to keep you...
You heard that, Amanda?
We're going to keep you posted on what is happening between the NDP government and the BCTF. My point for unspun purposes is that this was always the BCTF versus the Liberal government. That was the problem. And what we're finding out now, it is the BCTF negotiating with whomever happens to be in government. That seems to be an issue currently. Hopefully that changes, and quickly, because we want this done. June 30th is the deadline.
Is there an example of a society that really puts education first, it doesn't benefit from that?
No.
It's like you look at the countries.
Look at Denmark.
Sweden, places like this where they have the highest, least crime rates, and they have the best education systems. And Canada's not, we're doing great, but you actually were saying that teachers in BC are the least paid in Canada. I didn't know this.
One of the two least paid. Like, it's remarkable.
Yeah.
We should do.
Forget class size. I mean, let's living wage, please.
We will gather together some of the details on that and unspin it for you. Perhaps next week. I'll do some research on actual number crunching for what the teacher. I will. I'm a little bit of an investigative reporter sometimes. Yeah, not just a sportscaster, George. I do want to talk about gas really quick, because that's another thing that we're being told that John Horgan, Premier John Horgan, has said. You can look at all of the analytics, all the stats, everything.
Except provincial related stuff. The stuff that he actually controls. I'm thinking he either assumes, I already know what we have, or we know what's in our toolbox. We just need to know what else we can do. But I'm thinking, well, we all know what those are as well. It's
How about
the
we
private
see all
sector,
of it?
the federal government, and the municipal government. I mean,
I guess we could do the math on that. Take all those other numbers and then subtract what it actually is and come up with what the...
The easiest route is for him to just stop putting heat on the oil and gas industry, and you might see the gas prices come down. That's what's happening here.
Is it going to happen though?
No, it's politics. It's all about spin, spin, spin.
And that's why there's so
win.
But there's so much. Can we have that on at UnSpun podcast? You got to follow along there at George
_
Affleck on Twitter. A great follow on Twitter, I might add. You can follow us, obviously, at the Orca BC is a good Twitter handle, and you can always find our podcast at the website theorca.ca.
I'm getting a lot of heat on Twitter this last couple of days about housing, by the way.
Really?
Well, I'm trying to, because you can't really. People are still. There's all the people very happy about the crash of our economy and our housing sector, which of course we all know the story and why it happened. But it's not. It's a bad thing in a lot of ways because of people who are collateral damage, as it were. I mean, there are people who I know,
Massive.
and they're a 25-year-old couple, and they would have bought an apartment for, too much money, and they have a mortgage of, say, $600,000. And right now, those prices haven't crashed yet in those condos, but it's very likely they're going to, because this is the way it goes. It's once one starts, it's a domino effect. And imagine if you're 26 and you've bought a place for, say, $700,000, you got a mortgage of $600,000, and then suddenly, for whatever reason, let's say you lose your jobs or you have to move or whatever, and you can't.
And your condo's not worth $700,000.
And you sell it for like $300 or $400. Now you're in a hole, and you can't actually do that. you have to find the money to pay the bank.
Right. It's not as people would assume, where you just hand the keys in. That doesn't work.
So now you've got the $200,000, which you have to go find that money, because you can't. If you don't have a house, you don't have a mortgage. You can't have a mortgage. You got to find the money somewhere else. And so now we're going to see foreclosures. We're going to see personal bankruptcies. All those kinds of things are going to start happening.
Massive collateral
as
damage.
it did in 2008 and 1999 and 1992 and 1882 and 1444.
It happens all the time. But did you see what is unfolding in Australia? The story out of Australia with the pre-purchase of the new build, where families have bought plots of land that we're going to have the community. You know, when you go into, the roads are built, and the gas lines and pipes are all in, but it's just dirt, and they're just starting to pop up, and
really?
the new developments are coming together. So they bought their parcel, it was called, and they bought the parcel for $400,000, and it was $40,000 down, and then they're waiting for it to be built. Well, in the time between the down payment and waiting for it to be built, and it's still not built, but just about, and it's coming to time where, okay, the valuation on it is now $300,000.
Yeah.
So the bank isn't going to lend you $400,000 for something worth $300,000.
No,
so these people then are on the hook for, like, it's
They go-
insane,
and if they're locked in, they
$150,000
can't-
for something they never even purchased.
So then you have to declare bankruptcy, or you have to walk away from that $40,000, but then you still have to. Anyways, it's a nightmare.
But that's happening in Australia right now.
And so they're about a year ahead of us.
Exactly.
And
So
here's
that's 2
the thing
years.
that, and I would say this is also going back to Horgan and what he's going to be dealing with in a year, and Kennedy Stewart in Vancouver. When we have a crash, and everybody's celebrating this crash right now. It's happy days. Oh no, it's most of the stories are very positive about this. But in a few months, when we start seeing these devastating stories starting to come, where you have young families who are losing everything, or whatever they might be, these terrible
Because
stories.
one loses, we all pay.
Exactly. You're going to see this start happening, and that's going to start becoming the narrative, and that's going to be right potentially before an election provincially, so that's not good. No. I would also say that I brought this up on Twitter, is the impact on development, certainly in Vancouver. We rely on these things called community amenity contributions, and they are directly tied to development. In order to get a development, in a lot of cases, especially if you want it higher, you want more height or more density, you have to pay extra money. You have to give the city money, or give them gifts of, community centers or whatever it might be. There's several different ways you can do it.
I'm going to put a
more
senior
often,
center on the main floor,
But Vision created more of the previous party in power really went after the cash. That cash now is tied directly to significant projects that are on the docket here, like the viaducts coming down, the Granville Bridge plan, some of the development along Broadway, housing, obviously. If this money doesn't, on the short term we're fine, but in the next couple of years, if development stops and that money stops rolling in at the $200 million a year mark, which it has been consistently for several years, where's this money going to come from? Guess what? Taxation. And so that makes Vancouver more unaffordable again. And I haven't heard a peep from the mayor or council on this at all. I tweeted saying, what's the plan? What's the plan? You are going to see your decline from $200 million a year to zero.
And just that gravy train. Because there are a bunch of gravy trains that the taps have been turned off.
Absolutely. And this is the same Burnaby. All these cities have these amenity contributions and development cost levies, which are what you pay when you finish the building to pay for sewer and water.
Yep.
If all that stops or goes down by 70 or 80%,
that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
And you got to make it up somewhere.
Or stop.
So how are you getting
reprioritize your capital things.
How are you getting heat on Twitter from stating that? That sounds rather factual to
Most
me.
people are just going, oh, come on, it's about time. Yeah, the money laundering, all that stuff. They're so focused on the current story.
Like, let the people crash.
I know, and I'm trying to
people.
Exactly. That's what people say. They deserve. It serves them right for buying a condo at that price. You're like, people just want to have a home. It's like, you can't be cruel. Not everybody was some evil foreign
Nobody was necessarily
person
coming
with
in to
money
flip.
laundering, and I mean, come on.
So chime in on our Twitter at UnSpun Podcast. Also, you got to read the middle. I buried a line in the middle this week. for George in particular. And when I came in today to record this, I said, so obviously you haven't read my column. And he goes, no, I haven't yet.
I blamed it on McLean for not
You
posting it properly on a feed.
McLean, you were on it. Our editor-in-chief was very much on it. And he noticed right away when I submitted my column for posting, he's like, oh, nice shout out for George there. See if you can find it. Basically,
it wasn't the number 43.
No, it wasn't.
Communication staff in the city of Vancouver.
Cheers. Oh man, this drinking game is awesome.
This vodka is delicious, though.
It's water. It's water.
Okay, mine's vodka.
But the middle this week is talking about some of the conflict between the haves and the have-mores. People look at the west side of Vancouver as a bunch of people who have too much anyway, and then development, and they're complaining about it, and there's NIMBYism and blah blah blah, and the polarization between development and the UBC SkyTrain that's going in, that line, the extension on the Arbutus subway line, and the development and the upzoning that is happening along that line, and it's going to grow with transit. I don't personally think that that's a bad thing. I do, however, understand the people who are a little concerned when go down West Broadway and there's a bunch of new developments and they're beautiful. 4 stories with commercial on the bottom,
Mostly rental.
Mostly rental, but a lot of them are really nice for purchase as well. But there's a new development proposal for Broadway and Alma, and where True Confections, that little delicious pie, right?
Banana chocolate pie.
There you go. Very famous. But this strip mall, I mean, it's like a dead end. It has been the quietest place on the planet. Nothing down at that end of West Broadway, at the end really of West Broadway, commercially. Nothing's really been there. But the proposed building is 14 stories. Wow. And it's...
I live in Yaletown. What did I get? 14.
But 14 stories in the middle of Kitsilano. And that, you know what? Thank you. Because my message is that in Yaletown, when you live in Yaletown, you kind of expect to have towers and whatnot. And there are people who have lived in Kitsilano or have moved to Kitsilano because they like the low profile of it and the character that exists in Kits. And is there a way to maybe find some middle ground on, maybe it's not 14 stories, maybe it's 7. Maybe there are a bunch of 7s.
It's all about the street experience, I think. And
I agree.
The West
I
End,
want more people coming to
the West End,
neighborhood.
which is always the densest neighborhood, which is not true, but the way it's designed, and by the way, it's 80% rental in the West End, towers everywhere.
Yes.
But do you walk around the West End going, towers, 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 towers? You don't, because of the setback, the grass in between. They only have 1 tower per block. Yeah. Very strict regulations, and the West End residents are very active.
And there's some of that in Kitsilano, I have to say. There are some towers in Kitsilano, but they're done. Right, so they're done with character. The feeling is that with the influx or the building of the transit, we'll see like dominoes fall where a 14-story building is just the smallest building, and then all of a sudden we have Vancouver House in Kitsilano, it's the Blade. People are freaking out. So read the column.
This is a rental building, isn't it, too?
Only partially rental.
Okay.
Some are mid-rental, mid-affordability rental, and some are market rental.
All right, so it's got a 20% rule, whatever.
Yeah, I think there are 100. I've got the numbers in my column. I think it's 151 units, and I think 37 of them are going to be
truly
more affordable.
Yeah. Well,
even then, it's like between $900 for a studio, $900 a month for a studio apartment, and those 30 or 27. I can't even quote my own column, but it's there. The Orca.ca is where you'll find it. One more note on Twitter, because we were talking about this before, seeing a lot of action. Michael Geller.
Yes.
He is tweeting from a fearless perspective.
Sometimes, yeah. This week he's all on the garbage thing and the stinky parkades. And who doesn't agree with this? You go to these parkades that are owned by the city of Vancouver, who have a huge fund of money to use for parkade management that they collect. They make a lot of money, these parkades, and they haven't really been taking care of them.
And
he pointed that out, and now he did it very successfully. He got a lot of coverage on that, and that started on Twitter, and now he's going after just garbage everywhere. He's like pointing stuff out. Who doesn't?
I do that.
Why
That's
is this not
garbage.
A priority in our city?
But let me give it.
I talk to staff. It doesn't cost that much to deal with this.
But if you alert the city hall at the 311,
yes.
If you copy them in on the Twitter or whatever, they do get back to you and they do clean it up.
Yes.
It's on us to say, are you aware that there's a mattress,
Absolutely.
3 suitcases, and some bike tires stacked on
or
this
a pothole,
garbage?
And you tag.
Right.
I think you could download the app, and they have an app.
I have the app.
So just use that. It's a better way than 311. I think it's City. Oh God, now I forgot the name.
Van
Connect.
Connect.
Thanks, Amanda.
See?
Van
That's
Connect.
why you married her.
I
Hey,
didn't marry her, but don't get her started.
Well, you know what I mean. Okay, well, almost married her. Married-ish. Married George-like. But
George Fact marriage.
George marriage. Shout out to some people who have stopped me on the street, including my friend Adrian Cunningham, who's a filmmaker. He's got a great short film out called A Bedtime Story that everybody should watch. And Brad West is a big fan of the podcast as well. A number of people who say they never miss it. So our ask to you is spread the word. Spread it around. We're just starting. We're episode 20, but we really appreciate you watching, commenting.
We can almost drink in America now. One more episode.
One more episode and we're legal everywhere.
Adults everywhere.
Okay, you got to go because you got a job.
Yeah.
43 Communications, City Hall. I'm Jody. That's George.
Bye.